Hello students, welcome to my class. Today we are going to study a poem by John Keats, that is La Belle Dame Sans Merci. John Keats is an English poet of Romantic age. He was a poet of Romantic age and he also died very early at the young age of only 25. But before that, he wrote many famous poems and most romantic poems to be remembered forever. And today's poem, La Belle Dame Sans Merci, this title is actually a French title. It is taken from French language, which suggests Belle means a girl, that a girl or a woman, young woman, sans mercy means without mercy or without pity, without any true feelings. So the dame, Belle or dame, means the girl or the young woman is without mercy. This poem is a ballad, and ballad means which are generally sung by the poets from the countryside about any particular events like war, any great death, or any such event which evoke the basic feelings of humanity, the basic feelings like fear, anger, happiness, sadness. So John Keats, the romantic poet who created very beautiful poems, very attractive poems with lot of imageries, lot of beautiful, colorful, soundful imageries, is composing this poem, which is also found to be autobiographical, or it has some reflection of his own life. It is believed that he was in love with a girl from his neighborhood, Fanny Brown, and that lady also treated him very cruelly, though Keats was deeply in love with her. So here also the title suggests that this lady is very cruel in the interaction of love, though the character, the main character in the poem, is deeply in the trance of her love. And this poem is written in a different balladic form, because the general balladic form consists of 4 lines of alternate tetra and trimeter. Tetra means 4 meter and tri means 3 meter. But here Keats is using 3 compressed tetrameters and 1/4 line which is of few syllables. It is not proper meter. And why Keats is writing such type of stanzas? Because it gives some speed, some pace to the story, because he is going to narrate a story. Ballad means it narrates a story, but Keats is trying to confine the story into a small poem, into a smaller poem in comparison to long ballads. So he wants to bring pace or speed into the story. And secondly, The speed into the story also brings out the intensity of feelings, the intensity of emotion on the part of the narrator, and which will not allow the reader to think in a very rational manner. So, what will happen? The listener will believe, because the listener has no freedom to take his or her attention from the narration. And this is a very often repeated poem in several anthologies, and it is also one of the most celebrated poems of John Keats. So, now let us look at the poem. Oh, what can ail thee, knight at arms, alone and palely loitering? The sage has withered from the lake, and no birds sing. So, the poet has found a knight at arms. Knight at arms means a heroic person, a person of military and romantic orientation. In Europe, knights are the freelance army personnel who move around by the cooperation of the kings or emperors, and they come back and they inform various incidents to the king or emperor, and they also can deal with any atrocities, any injustices made out to the common people. They always try to help common people. So, here the poet is finding, oh, what can ail thee, knight at arms? But such a knight at arms, who should be very strong, healthy and all that, is ailing, is suffering, because from his face the poet is finding that this knight is suffering from something. So, ail thee, alone and palely loitering, and he is loitering, he is moving aimlessly. Loitering means moving aimlessly. How? Alone, all alone, by himself, and pale, he looks very pale, not very healthy. The sage has withered from the lake. Sage means it is a type of long grass with flowers, trigonal grass blades. So, these grass, they have withered, they have dried off from the lake. That means the poet is trying to give us a natural background. The nature has entered with a season when this grass is withered, the grass is already dead in the lake, and no birds sing, and birds are also not singing. So, what can be the season? The season is definitely the onset of winter, because the winter is coming. So, already the grasses are dry. The grasses, they have withered, they have been destroyed by the cold, and the birds have also hidden in their nest, they are no more singing. And at the same time, this is also creating an atmosphere of alienation, sadness, suffering. Oh, what can ail thee, knight at arms, so haggard and so woe-begone? And the poet is asking, what can ail thee? You are a knight at arms, you are a romantic person, you are a powerful person, you are patronized by the king and the emperor. So, what can ail thee? What can make you suffer? Because you are one of the strong persons, you are one of the patronized persons of the king and the monarch. So, what can make you suffer? So haggard and so woe-begone, and you look, your physique, your body looks haggard, dry and suffering. You have shrunk, you have looked dry and woe-begone, and your mind, your face looks as if you are suffering from something internally, very intensely. So, haggard is suggesting the physical suffering, and U begun is suggesting the mental suffering on the part of the knight at arms. The squirrel's granary is full, and again the poet is coming back to nature and he is telling that the squirrel's granary is full. The squirrel who collects the grains from the field when the crops are harvested, now it has filled its granary, its storehouse is filled with crop grains. That means the winter has arrived, the crops are taken to the granary of the farmers, and the squirrel had collected the stray grains, the leftover grains from the field and filled its granary, and the harvest is done. The harvest is completed by the farmers. So you can look at the two stanzas. Here the first two lines are about the protagonist, the hero of the poem, that is the knight at arms, and the second two lines are about nature, which suggests the season and the time. I see a lily on thy brow, with anguish moist and fever dew, and on thy cheeks a fading rose, fast withereth too. Then the poet is discovering and telling the knight at arms that I see a lily on thy brow. Lily is a flower, but lily is a symbol. Symbol of what? Purity, innocence. But what purity and innocence? The purity and innocence of the unseen man, the man in its birth. And lily therefore is also a suggestion of death, because after death only man goes back to that state of innocence. So he is telling, I see a lily on thy brow. That means I saw the fear of death, the reflection of death on thy brow. The human brow always suggests the internal feelings, man's apprehensions, fear. And he is telling, on thy brow, on your brow, I have seen the fear of death and destruction. With anguish moist and fever dew, and there is also anguish, anger, self-frustration, that you are suffering from something, what you want that you can't achieve. Therefore, the anguish. And fever dew, there is also fever. Fever means not only the temperature of the body, but it is the fever of the mind. Your mind is also suffering from some unnatural thoughts, some great suffering. Fever dew, there are drops of perspirations on your brow, which suggest that you are suffering from fever, fever of your body and mind. And on thy cheeks a fading rose, and on your cheeks a fading rose. Rose is a symbol of happiness, health. We say rosy cheeks means a healthy person. So here the knight at arms is definitely a healthy person because he is a warrior. But here the rose is fading. That means he was healthy, but now he is no more healthy. His health is deteriorating. His health is going down. He is suffering physically as well as mentally. Fast withereth too, and your health is also fast withering. The color of the rose is withering, is fading away. That means your health is deteriorating, going down very rapidly. I met a lady in the midst, full beautiful, a fairy's child. So until these three stanzas, the poet is the narrator. The poet is asking the question to a knight at arms whom he met in a part of the nature. And now the knight is answering. So the knight is the narrator now. Therefore, it is in the first person. The previous three stanzas, they are in the second person narrative, but here it is the first person narrative. I met a lady in the midst, full beautiful, a fairy child. So the knight is telling, yes, I am going to tell you what happened to me. And he is telling, I met a lady in the midst, in the meadows, in those green fields, in the nature. I met a lady who was fully beautiful, extremely beautiful, and a fairy child. She looked like the child of a fairy, so beautiful, so heavenly, so gorgeous. Her hair was long, her foot was light. She was having long hair, because long hair is always associated with beauty and heavenliness. And her foot was light. She was also light footed. That means she was dancing, running, she was enjoying life. She was like a beautiful fairy herself. And her eyes were wild. And her eyes were wild. Here, wild means passion, full of passion. She was having passionate eyes, magical eyes, which attracts anyone. So, the knight is telling, I came across such a beautiful lady in the meadows, in the green fields. I made a garland for her head, and bracelets too, and fragrant zone. So, immediately I fell in love with her, and to express my love, immediately I collected the wild flowers from the nature, made a garland around her head. Because in the European concept, the garland around the head means it is the crowning. So, I crowned her as the queen of my heart, as the empress of my heart. And I also made bracelets from the flowers to put on her hands, beautiful hands, to express my love. And fragrant zone, and I collected many flowers and put those fragrant scented flowers all around her, making her smell as beautiful as those fragrant flowers. She looked at me as she did love, and made sweet moan. And then I found she was also responding. She looked at me with loving eyes. When I looked at her eyes, I found as if my love is reciprocated, as my love is returned. And made sweet moan. She was also moaning. She was making very sweet sounds. I couldn't follow her language. I may not know her language, but from her sounds, I could know these are sweet sounds, as if she is trying to express her love in her language. She is reciprocating my love with her passionate love. I set her on my pacing steed, and nothing else saw all day long, for sidelong would she bend and sing a fairy song. So what happened? Immediately I invited her. I took her up on my steed, on my horse, and the whole day we started traveling on the horseback, and nothing else all day long. We were simply looking at each other. Throughout the day I was simply looking at her. By making her sit in front of me on the horseback, I was not looking anywhere. For sidelong would she bend. Sometimes she would just bend side, giving me a side look from the horseback, and sing a fairy song. And she was singing some song which I couldn't follow, but I know that it is the song of some fairy land, some strange land. She was singing beautiful song as if she was also happy. I was completely immersed in her. I was not looking at anything. I was not feeling anything, only her and her. And she was also looking back at me, reciprocating my love, and also singing beautiful songs in her own language. She found me roots of relish sweet, and honey wild, and manna dew, And sure in language strange she said, I love thee true. Then she also collected for me, she also offered me as gift roots of really sweet roots from the nature, the natural fruits and roots which are very sweet, and honey wild, she also collected honey, wild honey, and manna dew, and manna dew means it is the nectar, it is some juice of the nature which is as good as the nectar we believe which is existing in the heaven. In our imaginary heaven, the nectar is an imaginary drink of the gods which make gods immortal and all powerful. So she also collected all these things for me. She also offered food, drink, honey, everything for me. And sure in language strange she said, I love thee true. And in some strange language she said something which I felt, because the lovers need no language. So I felt she is definitely telling me, I love you truly. I really love you very much. So she also reciprocated with me her intense love, her true love. She took me to her elfin grot, and there she wept and sighed full sore, and there I shot her wild, wild eyes with kisses four. And then she took me to her elfin grot. Elfin grot means the fairy cave. It was her cave where she was probably living. It was a fairy cave, beautiful cave. There she took me, and there she wept, and there in the privacy she wept. She started weeping as if she was trying to tell me, I am all alone. You please come to me, love me, make me happy and fulfilled. And sighed feel sore, and she also gave sighs. Sigh is a sign of deep love. So she expressed her deepest love by giving the sighs, feeling the sore. And there I shot her wild, wild eyes with kisses for. So I got wild in love also. When she expressed her deepest love for me, when she wept and she sighed, I also became mad in love. So I shot her wild, wild eyes. Shutting down her eyes, I planted 4 kisses, 2 kisses on each eyes. Why 4? 4 is having a significance. That means it is the confirmation that I confirm that I will also love you till the end, because we two are now unified. So I shot her wild, wild eyes with kisses 4, and there she lulled me asleep, and there I dreamt, ah, ooh, betide. And then she lulled me, she sang some lullabies, some songs of bedtime, and made me fall asleep. I slept. But then in the sleep I dreamt, I had a dream. Ah, ooh, betide. But this was a very sad and horrible dream. I slept in a highly happy state, but the dream I saw was a horrible and sad dream. What was that? The latest dream I ever dreamt on the cold hillside. And that was the last dream I had in my life. And that dream was by the side of the cold hill. I was in the elfin grot, in the warmth of her body and bed. But the dream made me realize that I am in the cold hillside. All the warmth is gone, and there is only coldness. There is the hill. There is no lady. I saw pale kings and princes too, pale warriors, death pale were they all. They cried, La belle damson's mercy hath thee in thrall. So what I saw in the dream? I saw pale kings and princes too. There are many kings and princes who are looking very pale, suffering. Pale warriors, knights like me, they are also looking pale. Death pale, were they all? They all were looking death pale, as if they are going towards death. Gradually, they are becoming more and more pale, they are moving towards death. They cried, La belle dame sans mercy. They all said in unison, together, they said, Oh, you are the newcomer to our world. This is the world of La belle dame sans mercy. It is the world of the beautiful lady without pity, without mercy, who doesn't have any feeling, who doesn't have any love, hath thee in thrall. Now she has also made you a victim. You are now in her trance. Now you are in the control of her illusion. You have fallen into the illusion, into the trap of La belle dame sans mercy. You are the new victim. You are the new guest to this world of pale warriors, kings, princes, who were once upon a time fell in love with this lady like you, but whom she rejected. Not only rejected, whom she made suffer in the paleness of death. I saw their starved lips in the gloom, with horrid warning gaped wide, and I awoke, found me here on the cold hillside. Then the knight is narrating that I saw when they told me, I saw their starved lips in the gloom. Their lips are starved. That means they have been made to starve. They have been made to suffer, to die. Their lips are starved in the gloom, and with horrid warning gaped wide, and their lips are separated. There is a wide gap which is like a warning. Their lips are not closed. They are not closing. Why? Because they are suffering so intensely that they cannot close their lips. And their open wide lips give a warning to me that how intense is the suffering of being rejected, being made destitute in love. When you love someone very deeply, but you are made a destitute, then what will be the suffering? This is the suffering of death in life. So these people, they are suffering the death in life, and their wide gap of the lips is giving me the warning that I am also going to be one such victim. And I awoke and found me here, and then my dream was broken in a horrified sense. I was horrified, my dream was broken. I woke up, and then I discovered I am on this cold hillside. And this is why I sojourn here. And then the knight at arms is explaining to the poet, that is why you are asking why I am here loitering all alone, why I look pale. This is the reason. For this reason I am sojourning. Sojourning means is a journey. It is a slow journey. So I am just loitering here because I can't go anywhere. I have forgotten my previous world. I have been taken into this new world of suffering and horror. Alone and palely loitering. And I am loitering here alone and palely. Why? Because in the destitution, in the rejection, in the suffering, every man is alone. Our sufferings can never be sad. Our happiness may be sad, but our suffering can never be sad. Therefore, the intense suffering on the part of the knight, the glover, makes him lonely, alienated, and loitering like a vagabond, aimlessly moving there. Though the sage is withered from the lake and no birds sing. And again there is the repetition to bring in the impact of the season. Though the sage is withered from the lake and no birds sing. So those grasses, they have withered, they have died, and birds are not singing. The winter has come. The winter has come on the heart of the lover. The winter has come in the life of the warrior. And he is making a sojourn, and sojourn is also suggesting that he is not going back to his earlier life. Rather, he is going gradually towards his death. He will be dying ultimately. So, this is a very sad, tragic tale, story. And here you will find the repetition in the last two lines of the last stanza and the first stanza. Similarly, the last two lines of the last but one and the stanza alternatively. So, these repetition of the lines, they are called as anaphora. And there is the symbol of lily, symbol of rose, the heel, and all that symbols are used. And also you find beautiful presentation of visual imageries of nature in the poem. And the poet is also making a very lyrical, very musical presentation of the poem. So, this is the poem, and there are several questions. You may face objective question, 1 mark, 2 mark questions, or some other questions. The questions are in there in your book, and we can discuss it later on. Thank you.